So we're not going to go into their whole history today, but on screenshots, you might as well say a little bit of remote control too. When the Trailer Park Boys started, a lot of people said, well, maybe they're ripping off these characters. Well, there is a connection. They're in kind of a rural, not say rural urban part of Canada and the States, both of them. Trailer Park Boys have three, and this longtime hetero male couple has two. Now, Jay and Silent Bob basically created the two, it's probably the best male stoner couple of all time. And even though a lot of people don't know who they are, the people that do in the ViewAskew Universe see them as sort of the gods of this type of humor. Now, Jay and Silent Bob are fictional characters portrayed by American actors Jason Mewes as Jay and Kevin Smith, the multiple director, writer, creator genius, respectively. They appear in the ViewAskew Universe, a fictional universe used in most of the films, comics, and TV programs, written and produced by Smith. Now, Jay and Silent Bob are the only characters that appeared in every Askew Universe film. This excludes Smith's other projects: Jersey Girl, Zack and Miri Make a Porno, Cop Out, Red State Tusk, and Yoga Hosers. The characters are shown spending most of their time selling marijuana in front of the convenience store in the Clerks films. In Clerks, the animated series, they are also shown selling illegal fireworks. Now, if anybody knows convenience store culture in Canada, they're on Aboriginal reserves, they're in urban and rural centres, and sometimes people stand outside basically checking out and saying, oh, you're partying this weekend, would you like something for it? Now, marijuana is now legal in Canada, so it kind of defeats the purpose because you can go to a dispensary like Liquor New Brunswick, Alcohol New Brunswick, or on an Aboriginal reserve and get whatever you want, edibles or whatever. Now, when they were created by Kevin Smith, they first appeared in Clerks, and basically they have this mantra of singing about their wares. Silent Bob, portrayed by Smith, had a reticent nature, would rarely speak, communicating mostly through gestures and facial expressions rather than speech. When he does speak, his comments are often poignant and insightful, providing critical reflections that influence the course of the narratives. And of course, the thing, they're obsessed with Star Wars, they're obsessed with Morse Day and the motherfucking time, and similar cultural aspects of the 80s and 90s. Silent Bob is characterized by his long hair, beard, and a backwards baseball cap. Now, we really don't know what team he takes up for, but being in Jersey, it could be the Devils, which is a running trope as well. He typically wears a long coat, resembling a Jedi robe. Originally a smoker, the character has been shown to have quit in later films. His background includes being raised Catholic and possessing a talent for gadgetry. Now, Jay, played by Jason Mewes, contrasts sharply with Silent Bob. He is verbose, frequently using crude and offensive language. Ricky and Julian, I'm looking at you. Jay's demeanor is outgoing and sometimes aggressive. He is slim with long blonde hair and typically wears a black knit cap in the later films. And has an obsession with the scene in The Silence of the Lamb where he tucks himself in. His overt sexual behavior and ambiguous sexuality are a recurring theme in his character development across the series. Now, we don't know if he's fluid, we don't know if he's bisexual. There's some gay aspect because he's saying my hetero-like partner, so, Now, both characters are said to be born in Leonardo, New Jersey, meeting during their infancy. Throughout the series, they're often seen loitering outside the quick stop groceries, kind of the equivalent to Circle K in Canada, and engage in various misadventures. Jay and Silent Bob's role often serve as comic relief, but also include moments when they drive the plot or deliver key thematic messages. I'm looking at you, Chasing Amy, Dogma, Mallrats. Now, the Chasing Amy incident, the scene in which Jay and Silent Bob meet Holden at a cafe to accept payment for the Bluntman and Chronic comic book, which Holden puts together with his possibly homosexual life partner, these Tracer. His only appears in Chasing Amy. Now, their voices were heard again during the end credits of the movie, which could contain a reference to the return of Jay and Silent Bob, released 2 years after the events of Chasing Amy. Now, the idea about this, the soliloquy has gone down in movie history. In his longest speech to date, and this is in Chasing Amy, and it sums up the plot of the movie, and although there was some kickback towards, promiscuity, supporters, or LGBTQ, Silent Bob explains that much like in Holden's relationship with Alyssa, when she finds out actually she She's a late middle life lesbian. After having several heterosexual or fluid relationships, he became distressed at the revelation of Amy's sexual past, specifically that she engaged in threesomes, a la finger cuffs. Upon discovering this, he broke up with her. Bob later realized he was not annoyed at her, rather he felt inadequate given his lack of experience. By the time he realized this, it was too late and she had moved on. He has since spent his life chasing Amy, so to speak. Now, moved by Silent Bob's story, Holden devises a plan to fix her relationship with Alyssa, but as in the Silent Bob's past relationship, it is too late. Holden passes the reins of power over the Bloodman comic book and creates a new comic named Chasing Amy based on the relationship. Now, you got to understand, in early 1990s comic book culture up to the early 2000s, that's like the glory era of boxing. Everybody was in comics at the time. You had the X-Men just before the movies hit big, Spider-Man and whatever. The movies have taken away from the comic book aspect of this. But comic books, it's 30 years ago, hard to believe, and Kingdom Come was around the time, comic books were bigger than comic book movies, if you can believe that. Millions of issues sold of certain key Marvel titles or DC titles. Now, Jay and Silent Bob, like I said, it's an acquired taste, because a lot of people basically think they're misogynists. They think that, they shouldn't even be considered, But you look at Laurel and Hardy, you look at Cheech and Chong, there's a direct correlation. Now, obviously, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which was number 3 of the box office and made a little bit of coin. You had the Jay and Silent Bob reboot. Yeah, either you like the Jay and Silent Bob universe or you hate it, because it's an aspect of this. We all know people from high school or university that act like Jay and Silent Bob. I had a lot of people in college at NBCC Woodstock. I had a lot of people in high school, nickel, dime, or quarter. That's when you would beg money for dope at the Dalhousie High School. We had competing dope dealers. It was more violent in nature. But Jay and Silent Bob, again, it's still hard to believe. Really, they hit their height 3 decades ago. It's like shocking, because the people were 20, 25 years old watching Jay and Silent Bob and getting stoned, probably voted for Trump in the last fucking election. So that's completely bizarre. So it's like Trailer Park Boys is a second wave of the stoner, well, that's the third wave. The first wave was Cheech and Chong, which lasted well into the 80s. Jay and Silent Bob picked up the mantle in the early 90s, and Trailer Park Boys picked up the mantle in the early 2000s. And the connection is this. Kevin Smith spent some time in Canada at film school. Like any good Canadian director, he maxed out his credit cards to make Clerks. Now, Clerks itself, it's a good first effort, but it's not about Jay and Silent Bob. It's about 2 lifelong pals. And that's the trope that follows in all these movies. There's 2 male characters are very close. But Jay and Silent Bob, again, whether you recognize the Snoochie Boochies or you don't, what would the comedy been like in the 1990s without Jay and Silent Bob? Because you're in on the joke, right? And all the there's many characters in the Jay and Silent Bob universe. Everything from, real life people like Chris Rock, Alanis Morissette, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, Wes Craven. It goes on and on. Shannon Doherty, God bless her soul, Judd Nelson, Jamie Kennedy, Mark Hamill. So the universe itself, and now he's children, one of his major children is in it. But ladies and gentlemen, all I know is that I smile every time I think of Jay and Silent Bob. I would be fascinated, and I would probably, my head would explode with laughter if Jay and Silent Bob would have a crossover with Trailer Park Boys. I even have the plot. Jay and Silent Bob go to Canada. That's the plot, because he did Degrassi, because we know Kevin Smith had a big crush on Caitlin State-Smith-Titian's character on Degrassi, which is kind of ironic because, he was in his 20s and Caitlin was still a teenager. I'd like to see Jay and Silent Bob go to Canada. So if anybody knows Kevin Smith, I have a great plot. So contact me here. If you know anybody out there that knows Kevin Smith or his number, I'd like to see Jay and Silent Bob go to Canada. Like you do crossover with Degrassi. Obviously, Aubrey Graham, Drake is on it. So, it'll be a $10 million movie. It'll make 20. I'd rather have a $10 million movie out there. I would have a great director for it, but unfortunately, our Listagush, New Brunswick, I might say, Quebec director. Jeff Barnaby from Blood Quantum has passed away. He would be a great director. I'd like to see Jeff Barnaby do comedy. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing here with our movie podcast, let us know what a like, comment, subscribe, or share. My wife, Delise, always said I overrate Jay and Silent Bob. I think Jay and Silent Bob are a connection, like Groucho Marx in the 1930s, the same irreverent humor. And Jay and Silent Bob, there's not much of Jewish humor in it, but it's like a lot of Canadian humor, a lot of British humor. And when they're playing floor hockey in Clerks on the roof, well, I call it floor hockey or outdoor hockey, street hockey. You know, it was bastardized by Mike Myers' version in his movies. Wayne's World. But to see one of the main characters going out in a Russian shirt, it's a little bit too inside, as we say. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you're doing here, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share. And don't forget, Jay and Silent Bob would say, keep your stick in the ice. Bye.